Well, hello and welcome to Hey, it's Luskos.
Welcome.
Jennifer Lusko.
Welcome.
January
Welcome,
18th. This is episode 106, and we today have a fantastic conversation for you.
Fantastic.
The
honestly.
topic, the guest, the scope. We're in this lovely series of marriage conversations, and today we brought in an expert on an interesting aspect that you might not necessarily think about when you think about marriage, and that is parenting.
Yeah. And we're learning today how a strong marriage can really impact and affect our parenting and our kids.
Yeah.
And we get to talk with Sissy Goff today, who is the director of Child and Adolescent Counseling at Daystar Counseling Ministries in Nashville, Tennessee. I've heard about her for years, and recently in the past 3 years, heard about her podcast called Raising Boys and Girls. And it has just helped me so much as a mom, as a parent. She wrote a book called Raising Worry-Free Girls that I'm currently reading, and it is helping me so much. It's giving me tools in parenting. She's written so many great books that really are great resources for us as parents. And she's just such a joy. Yeah. Her voice is so comforting and kind.
She's great.
I just love her.
Yeah, this, of course, is its own conversation, its own world, the parenting world you don't necessarily think about, but we intentionally chose to include Sissy in this series on Hey, it's Luskos, where we're talking about marriage, because of the impact that introducing other little human beings, or as Jim Gaffigan calls it, tiny drunk people, AKA babies, into the home. It's all in well to focus on marriage when you're just newly married. Now, that doesn't by any stretch of the imagination make it easy.
Right.
But the introduction of new human beings into the environment just complicates the plot. So we thought we would try and get some help on understanding and just having the proper mentality on knowing how important it is to continue to prioritize the marriage when you have kids, and how you're not doing a disservice to the kids. In fact, just the opposite.
Yeah. You're
doing a huge favor to your kids by continuing to focus on having a strong marriage.
Right. I love that she talks about building the team for our kids, their emotional team, their health team, their spiritual team. And I just believe that you're going to walk away with just a love for her and a fan of her, but then also just some tools for you in your marriage, and even just hope, knowing that you can go through hard stuff as a married couple, and we can actually walk through things in front of our kids in a way that gives them hope and strength for what their future relationships could be, and even just security, knowing that you and your spouse are on the same team and you love each other.
Well, and I would even say if you're single, there's a lot in this episode that will be helpful for you going into it down the road, whether you end up getting married or not. Mm-hmm. I thought, though, Jennie, I would ask you if you could go back in your mind's eye to us going from being newly married to being new parents. We were already, crossing that divide and of just like, life together, husband and wife, but now life together, mom and dad, right? Massive title shift. We were just getting somewhat used to the title of like, I'm a husband. And now it's like, oh boy, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a mom. What was that divide like for you?
Gosh, well, it came sooner than what we had thought. I mean, we've talked about it before, but we had planned for waiting 5 years to have kids so that we could have more time.
We wanted to go places and do things. I remember saying, I want to be able to impulsively just jump in the car on a Friday night and go somewhere. I don't know why. We've never, ever had the urge to do that, nor have we ever done that. But we wanted to know that we could.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Not that you can't. That's the irony. Of course, you can do it with kids.
Well, and I think going into having kids, you think that all your life just kind of stops. But it's different. It's like you have to fight to keep your life going in the way that God's calling you. But you're just adding on these tiny humans to it, which does make it more difficult.
I think that's an important distinction because we sort of tacitly had in our heads that parenting would mark the end of the fun marriage. And we sort of, even in our planning, we need 5 years, that sort of subconsciously communicated that everything ended. The fun, the spontaneous, almost like once we were in that mode, that was all we were going to be in. And I think even our wanting to phase it that with the way we did, because we, as I'm recalling, continued all the fun things. I mean, of course, there's some changes because Olivia was there, but it's not like we stopped serving. It's not like we stopped going out. It's not like we stopped doing what God called us to do. And we continued to, as we could afford babysitters. And, in the first little bit, you don't even need a babysitter. We just dragged that car seat everywhere we went.
Honestly. And you just kind of, it's like you like to say, romance can be on any budget. Like, you can continue to have fun in your marriage on any budget. Like you can run, you can walk, you can put the baby to bed and have dinner and whatever. It's like, you just have to think a little bit more creatively and think outside the box. But I just remember loving it, honestly, but also, there's so much to navigate. And I think it just makes it more difficult to prioritize your relationship when all of a sudden, especially as a mom, I'm nursing her, I'm bathing her, I'm trying to make sure she has tummy time, I'm like all this stuff.
Worried about SIDS in the crib, and is there choking hazards in the bumper?
You're reading.
Maybe that was more my worry. I was focused on that.
No, well, it's all those things, because now you literally have a human that you are responsible for. And so it just adds a weight that you're carrying, and adds more in your brain to worry about, and not worry about, but yes, worry about and consider. And it's a lot. It was a lot, but
in a way, the mom kind of has maybe an advantage, and I don't want to call it an advantage. In the specific way I'm talking about, becoming a dad, I feel like really hit me the day I held Olivia. When I first saw the ultrasound and heard the heartbeat, for sure, but when I really, but you get the benefit, if we're going to call it that, please don't send hate mail.
Oh gosh, it is a benefit.
Carrying the baby in your womb. So as that baby grows, you're feeling it kick, you're having all that time with the child to bond with it. So in a sense, I'm asking, do you feel like that becoming a mom gave you more to go on? It was less sudden. I'm a mom the day Olivia's born. I feel like the day I held her, I became a dad. I feel like you kind of were aware of that life all throughout the pregnancy. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think that is fair. I think it was
more gradual. I'm saying, is it more gradual?
It is gradual in the sense of you get time to think about it, and you are bonding with baby. You're praying, and you're just aware. You're constantly aware because you're housing and growing this baby inside you. But it's different the day that they're born, obviously, because now it's I'm handling them and I'm nursing them, and I'm so it is gradual, but not. It's I feel like all our kids just felt like little aliens inside of me.
Gestating. Yeah, that's got to be so weird. But let me ask you this, because I feel like, as I look back over the years, Jennifer Lusko, you continued to prioritize me and focus on me and us. And I don't ever feel like, I know I've talked to some guys who sort of feel like, party was over a little bit, on that. Once their wife became a mom, they felt like they were very much not as much the focus or priority. And this, I'm probably true vice versa. Some dads probably do the same thing. So what was in your mind, and were you intentional about it? Was it advice you were given that made you want to continue to really focus on me? Because I'm sure there was a tension sometimes when I wanted your attention, but Olivia had her needs too.
Yeah. I think it's all of the above. I think it's voices in my life who would encourage me, love your husband. But then also it was a natural, my relationship with you is my priority. And I want to not make you feel like you're runner up and you're on the back burner, you know? And I think that there's always been tension with, especially in the newborn phase, when it's like, it depends on me. And I think even just with all of our girls, I experienced that more because I only really nursed them. I guess Lenya had formula, so like we could share that responsibility a little bit. But for Olivia, Daisy, Clover, it was like I was feeding them. But then with Lennox, because of his allergies, you would get up in the night and feed him. And it was more, I felt like it was more of a shared thing, and it wasn't just everything depends on me. And so I think
I literally cannot produce milk. Yeah, right. There was very little I could do in that exchange. Yeah. I'm working on it, you know. I'm not working on it.
But also, like, I remember someone telling me, like, because I was able to work as a mom and I didn't work outside the home, like, I mean, I did in a sense.
I mean, you did in some ways. Yeah.
Like, I mean, we were serving in ministry together.
You were pregnant and serving all throughout the first part with Macaroni Grill when you were serving as a waitress.
Yeah, that's true.
And then eventually,
I was at home, but I was also involved in youth ministry.
You were always pulled in
and
multiple
all
directions.
The things. Yes, pulled in all the different things. But someone I remember had said, like, as much as you can, like, you can be the one to get up in the night so that your husband who works outside of the home, and it's different nowadays, I know, because there are parents who all work at home and in home. But I think just being aware, like, I feel like that was something that I wanted to make sure you got your sleep and the rest that you needed, knowing that the next day, if I was up in the night, I could take a nap at some point when the baby was sleeping, which is different when you have multiple kids, but it's messy.
You shift into zone defense at a certain point.
And honestly, I feel like I was in a cloud a lot of the baby years. And I feel like even just in the past, maybe 3 years or 2 years, I've kind of like woken up, quote unquote, like, oh, I'm out of that, the weird fuzzy feeling, and my brain just feels like a little bit clearer and back to normal, so to speak. But I guess I would just say
I would say, you know, you getting off drugs has been really helpful towards
Levi,
that.
let's
Just
go.
kidding. The way you were describing the fogginess,
No,
I was
but
like,
that's real. Like the
mom brain,
natal depression and issues and struggle, like that's all so real. And I think sometimes new moms can feel like they're crazy, but our brains, like, first of all, our bodies go through so much creating a baby. I mean, the fact that we're pouring in our calcium and our nutrients into this baby.
You got to make a skeleton, man.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Woman. And,
man.
And I think sometimes we just feel like we can't be everything that everyone needs us to be. And I think that for time, us just focusing on our husbands, focusing on our baby, and it's just different. It's different for everyone. So I don't want to paint a picture that this is how it's supposed to be.
But sure.
I think
this is descriptive, not prescriptive.
For me, I wanted to save up energy for you. And there were times where I didn't have any energy for sex, but saying like,
rain check.
I love you.
We've been great with that. Yeah.
I want you. I just have nothing more to give.
Yeah. That's been really great language for us. Nothing more to give.
But then at the same time, trying to reserve energy too.
Sure.
And I think that there is
that not being the statement every day.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is a period of time, especially right after you have a baby, where like you had to be sewed up in certain places and your boobs are just like not what they're solely food for somebody.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, udder. It's an issue of being an udder. I get that. And I think for the husband, it's like being aware of that. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like, geez, goodness gracious, you've just been through so much. There's going to come a season. I think knowing too, postpartum is one of the 2 seasons in a man's life when he's most open to infidelity, because the wife is, of course, recovering, and that's just not going to be, and you have to know that. I think both sides need to know that. So I think that's a season to be really careful with pornography. If there's a temptation there, just extra diligent in shoring those sorts of things up, not allowing there to be the affection, anything that could be at all moving in the territory of flirting, coworkers, like just knowing you're it's a mistake to go shopping on an empty stomach, right? Mm-hmm. So in the sense of during a season in your life where you're more, your sexual tank perhaps is at a lower ebb, just being more diligent to keep the shields up. Yeah. And I think that to me was always something I was more aware of. And I think you and I both wanted that the responsibility of raising our kids to never get in the way of us serving and loving each other. Mm-hmm. And I think here's a really important mentality shift to have. And Sissy's going to do this better than we do. So just stay tuned. And by the way, she is going to tackle the thorny subject of the kid sleeping in the bed and some really helpful suggestions. If your kid, check them into kids ministry, they won't do that. All those things. That's really good. She's an expert and she's written like 8 books. Yeah. Her newest is Brave, A Teen Girl's Guide to Beating Worry and Anxiety. And you can go to raisingboysandgirls.com to get all the information about her various podcasts, publications, etc. So she'll do better than we do, but we can tell you this. We never wanted to be parents to our kids instead of or at the expense of being husbands and wives to each other, because at 18, they go to college, and at 20, 25, 30, like they're starting their own marriages, families, lives, careers. So we'll never stop being parents to them, but they're not going to be in our lives like they are right now. Yeah.
If the goal is to send them off into their life and their marriage, we need to continue to prioritize ours because they're not always going to be around.
If our kids were meant to go and we are meant to stay, the marriage is meant to stay, we thought to ourselves, it would be crazy to let a temporary assignment rob us of a lifelong to the grave assignment.
Yeah.
And sort of hurt their ability to properly spread their wings and go by making them the undue center of the story. That would hurt our marriage, be bad for them and bad for us. And then they end up maybe staying because they meant to go, but if they're the center, why would they not stay around longer and be 30 and be still dependent and be kind of warped all that? And then we don't have the marriage, and then that hurts them too. So it's like, okay, we're gonna focus on what and not let something get robbed that could easily get robbed in a season. So I think for us, that was really important. And as we sit back on it, we're not sitting in some lofty experience of decades, but our oldest is almost 18, and we've seen some things be proved true. And I guess to me, the big compliment is that people do come to us asking for, how do we fight for the culture? What are some of the things we've done in our marriage and parenting? And so only because people ask, have we opened up and given some of those, some of that wisdom.
Right. Well, and it seems so simple, but I think it can be easy to not do the simple things. So to save up a little bit of energy to have a conversation with you, even though I'm so tired from the day, from work and from school, homeschool, and all the things. It's like, I don't want to just give you my leftovers. I want to, I literally think throughout the day, I want to save up some time so I'm not just automatic, I don't get in bed and then just immediately fall asleep because I'm so exhausted. I think I want to save up a little bit of energy for a conversation with Levi, for asking him how his day was, for intimacy, whatever it is. I want to save a little bit of energy.
And the same for me with regard to not coming home depleted, not being wiped out so much that I just have nothing more to give. And I think also, especially during the initial baby phase, just being generous, understanding what load you're carrying and not being so needy and not being so prone or quick to be offended. And I think knowing that's a season, that's something that comes and goes and quicker than you think.
Yeah, it's true. And I think even on my end, my side of, maybe sex looks different. And I just, to be honest, maybe it's not, I don't know. I don't know what I want to.
We're going to get a warning. We're going to get the parental advisory.
I just think there's ways to be there for you that doesn't include the normal way.
There we go.
But I'm just being honest. I think sometimes be
creative.
We can be creative and just think just being aware. And I think for us as moms, it's easy to just focus in on the kids, but it's just remember. And I think when there's grace on both sides, and there's just awareness on both sides, and there's flexibility on both sides, and there's just remembering that we're on the same team. And when kids come into it, it's not like the mom has all the answers and can do it all. And I mean, we've had this conversation, like making you feel like you are also a parent. You're not the second in command parent. You are the parent also. And so when things that I say don't belittle or demean you and, well, you're not doing things my way. Well, let me tell you exactly how to do it. Let me tell you exactly how to
burn your
put Lennox
spouse
to
in front
bed.
of your kids.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think learning that, and I mean, I've learned the hard way in a lot of things, but preferring each other.
Well, this conversation will help you. Towards the end, we do get a little leaf blower action, so you'll have to fight through that. Mike was out there blowing some leaves, but man, we are grateful for Sissy Goff coming on today to help us understand the impact of our marriages on our children. So please do enjoy this conversation.
Yes.
And thank you, everybody,
Thank you
for being with us. If you can think of anybody in your life who needs to hear this conversation, share it with them. Rate it, review it, subscribe to it, put a ring on it if you like it. Hit that subscribe, smash that subscribe button. And then send it to a friend. Share it on social media. Do the things at the place with the people.
We
and
love
the stuff. You. Enjoy this conversation. Sissy Goff, welcome to Hey, It's the Luskos. We are so honored to have you with us today.
Well, I'm so honored to get to talk with you all. It feels like we're friends far away and we haven't ever even gotten to be in person.
I know. It's hard to even try to begin where to start with you, because I'm just so grateful for you. 2 years ago, well, I've heard about you, but 2 years ago, my friend Holly Furtick gave me a link to your podcast about the season that kids are at. So like where kids are at and then what they need. And it changed my life. And I've literally shared that podcast with more people than I can even count. And it just revolutionized my life, my mind with, oh, this is actually a stage that my kid is at. And this makes so much sense. And this is what I can do in this stage. And it's so simple, but it's so good. And so I just personally thank you for who you are, how you're building the kingdom, how God's using you. You are a gift to me and to the world. So thank you.
Jennie, thank you. That means so much, more than you know.
Sissy, I think we've done over 100 episodes now, and I've never seen Jennie more excited to talk to anybody. She has been fangirling ever since you said you'd come on. She took a shower today. She washed her hair. This is usually things reserved for full moons.
No, it wasn't today. I took a shower yesterday.
Oh gosh, even more special. So second day hair for you. She rolled out the second day hair.
Oh my gosh.
Very big deal.
Y'all are so fun.
No, but it really is a gift. You know, what you do, I mean, there's so many things we would and do want to talk about with you. We're still to come in the conversation. We want to kind of focus today, because we're in a little mini series on marriage. And I thought it would be helpful for us to get your perspective on the impact that a strong marriage has on children, because of your expertise being on children.
Yeah.
But I thought we would
love that.
sort of begin before we get there with just kind of like a little bit of a thumbnail sketch of who you are. We understand from our just limited knowledge of what you have your hand in. You spend your days helping kids and having conversation by counseling kids at the Daystar Kids Counseling Network. You've written a number of books kind of on that same wheelhouse subject. Kids Thrives, like Jennie mentioned, Milestones. And then you also are the co-host of a podcast or a couple podcasts. Is that right?
One.
Oh,
yes.
just the one.
Raising
Okay.
Boys and Girls.
Raising
Yes.
Boys and
Boys and
Girls.
Girls. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So just maybe just a little bit, maybe what I missed. I know I understand you have a dog you love. Lucy, is she somewhere near?
Yes, she is. She's sitting right beside me.
Oh.
Okay. So
Yes,
what am I
doesn't
missing
go far.
in the baseball card of Sissy Goff?
You nailed it. You nailed it. That was great. Yeah. I've been counseling kids and families this is my 30th year, which is crazy and makes me feel so old. But I just am so grateful and honored to get to do that work. And out of that, have gotten to do all the other things like speak and write and have a podcast and all that stuff. And just, I mean, y'all know it is. I met with a couple last night over Zoom, and they said they have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And they said, from our 20-year-old to our 15-year-old, it feels like a different generation of kids. Yeah. And that feels true. Like, things are just changing so much, so fast, that it makes me so grateful that you all would carve out time to talk about kids and what's going on and how we can help, because it feels more important than it has ever been to have those kind of conversations.
So Absolutely. Are things just speeding up? Is that what's happening? I mean, I understand that I heard that the nostalgia compression is a thing where they gauge how quickly things become vintage. And supposedly it's happening faster, where it used to be like, oh, I remember that movie from 15 years ago. Now it feels nostalgic to refer to something as 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where culture is just speeding by so fast. Things are ending up becoming kitschy quicker. So is that effect happening on a child's development level? Are you seeing those benchmarks compressed as well?
Well, there are a few different things going on. One is the rates of anxiety and depression and all those things are skyrocketing. Were before the pandemic, but now since, we're seeing that happen even more. But I would say, I think everything is in a time warp, to your question, because part of what we're seeing happen, it's really interesting. So I didn't really say this, but at Daystar, we do individual counseling. We have groups, and then we have a little summer retreat program for the kids involved called Hope Town. And I get to be the director of that. So I go spend my summers living with kids, Amazing. Which is so fun. And this past summer, y'all, it was fascinating, because this wasn't even the case a year ago, but we break it down into age groups. So we have 2nd through 4th, 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th, and 9th and 10th, and then 11th and 12th graders. And each age group was developmentally about a retreat behind. So the 5th and 6th graders emotionally were acting like 2nd through 4th, and 7th and 8th were acting like 5th and 6th, and 9th, on and on. Wow. And I think some of that is the impact. We talk so much about how the pandemic impacted all of us, but I think we're just still discovering how it's impacted kids. And I think they are much slower to rebound than we are. And so I think that has ratcheted up what was already concerning with kids. And so now we're just trying to kind of hover around them and rebuild whatever we can rebuild at this point.
Wow. I think just even having a knowledge and a starting point of understanding that there are some phases your kids go through, yes. and just kind of being aware of the beats and how the needs change. I mean, how it started for me was being my favorite thing is when Jennie discovers something she gets passionate about, because I've listened to your episodes, but I also feel like I've heard Jennie tell me about what's in the episodes 4 or 5 times. So I think it was so eye-opening for both of us just to realize, I mean, you kind of intuitively know, okay, kids go through grades, but there are stages that yes. from 0 to 18. Can you kind of just give us a 30,000-foot view of what those stages are as kids develop and the names that you kind of have for them?
Yeah. So I've done the girls' content, and then David Thomas, we used to call ourselves the Donnie and Marie of parenting until parents aged out of knowing who Donnie and Marie were. Yeah. But he's kind of the boy equivalent, male equivalent. And
by the way, he has such a soothing voice. I mean, you both do, but I feel like
do.
His voice to me sounds a lot like Andy Stanley's. I always feel like from the other room that it's Pastor Andy's preaching. Yeah.
Yes. I'll have to tell him that. He's from a little more of a small town outside of Nashville. I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, which is not a metropolis, but it's bigger than Shelbyville. So he's got a little bit more of a twang probably that slows him down and makes him sound softer. Yeah. But yeah, so he's got the boy stages, but I think I can give y'all the 30,000-foot view of both. So with mine, initially, the first stage with little bitty ones, we would call the discovery years, because everything is filled with the sense of discovery, from the high chair, the Cheerio that falls off the high chair, to the bug crawling across the floor, to whatever. And for girls, we talk about across development that that God did so much in terms of their brains that dictate this need to connect. Mm-hmm. And that's how they're made. I mean, that their brain development even has more oxytocins that are considered the nurturing hormone. And boys have less serotonin, which creates more impulsivity. And there's so much we see out of the starting gates that are so different. David talks about how boys are wired for activity and movement. And so his first stage would be the explorer. And y'all know, I mean, you've done that with boys. I mean, everything is about exploring. I have 2 nephews that are coming to spend a couple nights with me tonight. And one of them is almost 4. And, you know, David always says the number one question about that age boy is, why is he always moving? Which feels like, yes, why is he always moving? And he's so cute when he does it, but I'm chasing him all the time. So
sweet.
Discovery years and the Explorer are really kind of birth through preschool. Then we move into somewhere around 5 or 6 to 10, 11, I would call those the the adventurous years, because girls at that age are, you know, I think they're more active. They're taking on so many different sports and lessons and things they're wanting to learn. And there's a lack of self-consciousness that's really rich about that age in a girl's life. Now, we can talk about anxiety at some point if y'all want to. That is also the average age of onset of anxiety for girls. Boys, for David, he would call those years the lover. And he talks about how if you ever wanted a boy to get stuck in their development, that's where that they're so kind. Even developmental theorists call it the kinder years in that season of life.
Oh, just
for a little
cuddly.
boy.
Yeah, Lennox is 5 right now. And he is.
Yes.
He said to Jennie the other day, he said, "Mom, I wish I had 100 hearts to hold all that love that I have for you."
No, he did not, Jennie.
He said that to her. I was like, first of all, I need to write that down. That's a tremendous line.
I need to write that down. But then the next day he said, "Mom, I want to take you to the dump," because he was so mad at me.
He did say that. He wanted. I was like, "Buddy, did you tell Mommy you wanted to take her to the dump?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm done with her." It was just like.
Yes.
Anyway. He was Zorro for Halloween. He is a pistol. He is just,
Zorro.
He's obsessed with the 1950s Disney Zorro. Just loves it. Don Diego and the Tornado Horse. And I'm like, that's great. You can watch all that you
awesome.
want. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So then we would move into what I call with girls, the narcissistic years, which really to kind of take even some of the sting out of, you know, parents just all the time say something's really wrong. We think she's developed a personality disorder. You know, she doesn't want to spend time with us at all. She seems to only think about herself. And to know that's normal and what we can do in response feels like such an important conversation to have with parents. And boys, you know, it's interesting if we were to track their development, boys emerge from adolescence so much later, so they don't even hit adolescence until stage 4. Stage 3, they're still moving into a lot of this exploration and activity, and they're still kind of in that kinder phase of life. It's a lot more, I feel like, impulsive, but learning is so important, and connecting with, that's a time where they really need to connect a lot with their same gender, like with their dads is so important. They crave more time in that season. That's really significant. And then they move into it the next stage. So I round out development with 4 stages and hit what we call the autonomous years, where they're hitting much more independence. They emerge from some of that self-centeredness that's such a normal part of their development. And David hits the wanderer more around the age of probably 12. Boys hit even that adolescence, the rougher part of it, a little bit later. So she's going to hit it closer to 11, some girls 10. He's going to hit it closer to 13, 14, and not be out of that stage till 18, when he really moves into the last stage of his development. So it's different, but I think that so much of where I think we can get frustrated with kids is we're not aware of, Jennie, to your great point, we don't realize it's a stage, which also means it will pass, which has a lot of hope mixed into it. But to adjust our expectations based on what they're capable feels like such an important thing to lean into and be aware of.
So good.
Really good. And I would imagine then that a big part of the power of even just knowing those stages exist is being able to identify them, because if I hear you correctly, there's a great deal of different approaches needed for each of the stages in what they need from you and how you need to respond or not respond, react or not react to what you're seeing, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, what they need in terms of connection, because that shifts so significantly. And the way we connect with a 5-year-old, we would never be able to connect with a 15-year-old. So being a student of where they are with all that is so important. And consequences, all the things, that's going to shift as they get older, and the importance of their peers. I mean, we talk so much about how as kids get older, our voices get quieter and the voices of their peers get louder. So just taking all of that into account is so important as we're wanting to help kids.
That's so good. I again want to go back a little bit to you had said that you've been in your line of work and what you do for 30 years. What originally drew you to what you're doing? Like how did you get started?
Yeah, did you want to be the Yoda of child development when you were a child? Was that like your career path?
That is hilarious. Y'all, I'm so much older than you all when I was growing up, I did not know a person who was going to counseling. No one was talking about it. Literally the only person I'd ever even heard of in the field, this says a lot about me growing up in the 80s, was on Days of Our Lives. There was a psychologist named Marlena, and I loved her. I thought she was amazing. I don't know why I was watching soap operas in high school, but I certainly was. And so, I didn't know about the field, but I knew I wanted to work with people, and I really thought I wanted to help kids. And so it was kind of step by step in my life I got to college and I loved psychology courses. And so I thought, well, I want to major in that. Well, I think I maybe need a graduate degree to get to really do much with it. And so I applied to Vanderbilt and got in. And then I did an internship with Daystar. And I sat with Melissa, who's our executive director, and my interview with her, and was teary the entire conversation because I thought, okay, this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. And I never knew a place like this existed. And I really think I was one of those kids who I was involved in a lot of really great activities and really hungry spiritually growing up. And at the same time, as many places as I was, I had some hard things going on. And none of the adults in my life ever said to me, Sissy, no one smiles all the time like you seem to. And surely there's more going on deeper inside of you. We want to hear more about that, not just the good things. I think people didn't even know how to do that as much back then. So really, I think my perspective is I became or tried to become more of what I wish I'd had when I was growing up. And I just didn't even know it was out there.
Wow. That's really good. I only know two people who smile as often as you do. And the other one is also named Goff. So it is it is appropriate
isn't that funny?
That you, it just seems to come with the last name. And there's no relation, right?
No, well, the funny thing, no, but my dad is Bob Goff.
I'm talking about Bob Goff. Wait, your dad's not Bob Goff, is he?
My dad is a different Bob Goff, and my grandfather was Bob Goff.
But
I've never met this Bob Goff. I know.
You've not
I know
met
people
Bob Goff?
No.
What?
Can you believe that?
Almost feels like it just needs to happen.
Yeah.
I know.
And he does so much connected to counseling as well with on-site at the Oaks and you guys, and he's in Nashville all the time. It almost feels like this. I feel an obligation to make this happen.
That would be great. I'd love it.
Wow, that is so funny. Okay, so here's a question.
Okay. I feel like I should be asking y'all questions.
No.
Hey, we'll drive here.
We'll get you on Raising Boys and Girls. And
okay.
We'll do that. Okay.
No. Look. This is better than gold. Here, having a chance to talk to you.
Yes.
I'm just fighting the urge to ask you all like the personal counseling questions I want. I'm like, I've got an expert here.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. So let me talk to you about my friend Phil. Phil's a mess. He's terrible. He needs lots of help. Let's talk, Sissy. No, but we were raised in a similar culture, Jennie and I both, when it comes to counseling. It was almost like worldly, psychology was sort of a buzzword with the new age, That's like,
or if it was really bad, then you get counseling.
Yeah, but then it was even then it was usually, it needs to be just biblical counseling, just Bible, just scripture, everything. There's almost like, there's no real issue of mental illness. You just aren't having enough faith. Kind of the Bible will cure all your ills. Which I think the other side of that, the pendulum, the other way would be completely forgetting the gospel and just total psychology and what we've found is such power in this is scripture and there's also psychology. I wear contact lenses. I don't just pray for vision every day. I put my lenses in. And that's not a lack of faith, but just like there's someone who has an issue emotionally or whatever to lean into that. And Jennie and I in that course of discovering the power and strength of what it has to offer have benefited both in our marriage as well as in our own personal lives from intensives and ongoing counseling and biblically based counseling with psychology involved. And I guess for me, it's a little newer, the thought and the paradigm of children and counseling. And I can honestly say, I wish, and I'm sure Jennie would echo, when my parents went through a divorce throughout my high school, my mom didn't leave till I was a senior, but she functionally, emotionally left as a freshman. I didn't really have her there as a mom. And I would have said throughout my 20s, that didn't affect me. If you said, oh, how'd that affect you? I would have got like, that didn't affect me. And I hit a massive wall at 39. And it turns out it did affect me.
Yes.
And I've been unpacking for the last 2 years, really, some of those things. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have. And my parents didn't have the tools to even know that, nor were we in a church culture where that was really something that was done. So I guess my question to you is, outside of the trauma and the enormous things, the sexual assaults and those sorts of things, where it's like now it's obvious to all of us, how can a parent know when and when it's appropriate to seek counseling for their kids outside of those colossal earthquake type things?
Yes. I love that you asked that question.
Great question.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so I have a book called Raising Worry-Free Girls that I wrote right before the, you are.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
was
for
going to ask
reading
you,
that.
which of your
That's so
7
kind.
books would be the best for what you just mentioned, the stages? Because I'm sure someone's listening going, oh, dang, I want to know more about the stages. Is it the Kids on Track one?
Well, Raising Girls is really where the stages originated for girls, and Wild Things is David's book for boys.
So Wild Things
I wrote
and Raising Girls.
Wild Things and Raising Girls. And
I
I
don't
still
even have
think the
that on my
stages are
list.
helpful.
Because
Well, let me tell you, because I wrote Raising Girls back when MySpace was a thing. So it's a little old.
MySpace.
Yeah.
We launched our church in the era of MySpace, 2007. So we were all about that. Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
All about that.
Yes, MySpace. So, so that would be where the stages are. But Are My Kids on Track is the emotional and social and spiritual stages we feel like kids need to reach. So it would be, I hope it's helpful. But the Raising Worry-Free Girls, and then I have now written 2 books, one for elementary age girls and one for teenage girls, about anxiety, because at this point, we're looking at 1 in 3 kids. Girls are twice as likely to deal with it as boys. And Levi, I think to your point, there's so much that we want to do from a faith foundation to help kids have this bedrock when they do struggle emotionally. And I think we've shifted to being so psychology oriented in some ways that we're missing that piece of it. And the two want to work. We want the two to work in tandem for ourselves and for kids. But there are also a lot of tools. And I wrote those books kind of like our first 3 months of counseling to say, okay, if you can't get there, if you don't want to get there yet, here are things we want you to try. And if you do this for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and it feels like the needle doesn't move, then at that point, reach out to somebody. David has a book called Raising Emotionally Strong Boys that I would recommend the same thing. It's kind of the first wheels on the ground. These are some things to do. But I will also say I had this conversation with a mom. I loved what she said about counseling to her child, who said, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong with me. And this mom said, you're right. There is nothing in the world wrong with you. But here's the deal. As parents, our job is to build your team. And so I have people on your medical team that are your doctors that you check in with periodically. We have people on your academic team that are your teachers. And obviously, I care about your heart. And so we're going to have people on your emotional team. And you're not going to go to Daystar every single week for your life, but we're going to develop a relationship that then this is a person that's in our back pocket. Then when we need it, we call them. And you go see them a couple of times a year just to touch base and maintain the relationship. Isn't that beautiful?
Wow, that's brilliant.
I
Such a good way to
know.
put that.
Yes, I thought so too. Just to have, again, and we've had so many kids over the years that's happened where we have this relationship because they've come in a few times and have gotten to know each other. And then when a parent's diagnosed with cancer or something does come up, it's so easy to call and get back in because they already are familiar with it and don't feel as nervous that they can get right to work.
Wow, that's really good.
Really
That's
great.
wise.
We have a lot of regret about our initial response to our daughter's death. We didn't right away seek counseling, not for ourselves or for our kids. And I think in the coming years, I think we sort of ended up making that healing harder than it needed to be by not availing ourselves to those tools. And we've since been, on a path and a trajectory to rectify that. But I think, just knowing that was an option, not even just kind of realizing intuitively that was important. And, we got counsel from wise counsel from trusted voices, but not on the clinical side. And I think that would have
for our kids,
helped. Yeah.
Because our oldest was 7, and then Daisy was 2.5, and then Clover was not even 1 yet. And then Lennox was born after Lenny went to heaven. And so it's interesting to see the grief even on the other side, because even Olivia, our oldest, she was 7 at the time, she doesn't remember a lot of things, but she since has been able to have some counseling, and I think that's been helpful. And we talk about it as a family. But I think even for our younger ones, the grief that they're experiencing now, even though, they didn't know then.
It's almost like memories were stolen from them they never got,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Y'all, I'm heartbroken with you that you even had to go through that. And of course you didn't. I think you're just in survival mode as parents in that time. And so to even think through, how do I get to what we need, what the kids need, is just, you're just putting one foot in front of the other.
Okay. And then when it comes to, so a family hits that wall, they've done the 8 or 12 things, and they feel like they didn't move the needle with the child. How would you recommend a parent, kind of has that conversation with the kid, that makes it not feel like, something's wrong with you, you're going to this, what can be maybe just a couple things practically that could be helpful in having that conversation?
Well, I think, we're building your team is a great way to say it. And to say, I have a lot of parents who will come in and say, we want to learn how to be better parents. And we don't know. We're just figuring it out. And you're our first. Or even though we've already raised one, you're different. And, each of you are. And so everybody's going to have a person that's kind of their touch point. I think those can be great ways to say it. Or, the whole idea, I feel like we talk so much culturally anymore about how we're building tools. We're building a toolbox. And so, we just want you to have some more tools when you get worried or when you get frustrated or when you start to struggle. And I am having more kids than I have ever had at younger and younger ages who they're the ones who said, Mom and Dad, I want to go talk to somebody. And so I feel like often kids, even though they may not be the one who initiate it, when we say to them, hey, we feel like it'd be great for us to get somebody else that's kind of helping us think through this, they will feel a sense of relief, because so many kids that are struggling are angry with themselves because they're struggling.
I'm sure.
And so to know, okay, I can work through this and I can get help can make such a difference for them.
Okay, incredible. We could spend a whole hour just talking about that, and maybe at some point we could have a parenting focused talk. But when it comes to marriage,
Yes.
what role do you see the marriage playing in setting kids up to win?
Y'all, they're blowing leaves outside my house. Is it okay, sound
Oh,
wise?
it sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No,
of
don't
course,
be sorry.
right now.
No, it's very minimal. And,
Okay,
those
good.
leaves need to get blown. Right now, ours are under a
That's
foot of
true.
snow. So,
I know. Well, I hope.
we didn't get any
gonna
of
get
our
a lot
leaves picked
closer.
up in that backyard either. So there are leaves
y'all,
under that
no,
snow.
before the snow.
Slimy
Oh,
spring. That's
good
what it
grief.
leads to, a slimy spring.
And moldy.
I bet. Oh,
Bless.
yeah. Ugh, yuck. Yuck.
Lord help us.
Yes.
This
okay,
is when
the
I
question
bribe
was,
my children with money. Is that bad? I was like, hey, guys, I've got a great idea for you. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Okay, so the question was about, we go back to the
Just
question
kind of
about marriage.
understanding the impact of marriage on parenting, because you're talking to people who are parents and they want to win, and I think that gear is activated. But now in seeing the impact that the marriage is going to have specifically, how a strong marriage will help their children.
I think strong marriages make kids feel more secure. Would be the bottom line, I would say. And I think in this, mental health crisis in our culture, I think that is, again, more important than ever before, that kids have that sense of security. And I am amazed how many kids I will see who spike in anxiety. All of a sudden, their anxiety's gotten a lot worse. And then when they can get past how anxiety's impacting them, they will start to talk about how things are harder at home than they've been in a while. And I often think about it like, those thermometers we used to have before we were also dependent on our phones outside that would tell the temperature that you could look outside. I think often there are kids who are like that for the inside of their homes, that it's like they're kind of the outward emotional representation of the culture inside their houses and the atmosphere of what it's like. And so kids that are struggling a lot, often it has to do with what's happening. And we don't even know that because sometimes we don't know what's going on inside the home, but the child is showing evidence of it. And so I do think it impacts them more than we're even aware.
That's really helpful. And of course, I don't ask that or try and focus on that to bring shame on anybody who's like, well, my marriage is struggling, so goodness gracious, now I'm screwing my kids up even more. I think we all deep down are afraid that we're, I think sometimes I picture my kids 20 years from now, I'm like, oh crap, I just gave them great material for the counseling session when they hit 30. But to say there is power in it. So to focus on your marriage, you're doing a future favor for your kids, right? Yes. And I would say in all things, raising kids, one of the best things we can do for them, if not the best, is to deal with our own stuff. And so you're right. There's no shame. And every marriage hits hard places. But in those hard places, to seek help, not only for yourselves, but to know how much that's going to impact your kids. And even for you to be able to say, you've heard mom and dad argue some lately, and we want you to know, just like we feel like counseling is important for you, or might be at some point, we're going to go talk to somebody that's going to help us figure out how to love each other better, because everybody goes through things like this. And even, we talk so much in parenting seminars about how you're going to disagree as parents, but to disagree with respect. And then if it turns disrespectful, we love it when parents have a code word that you can say, watermelon, or let's have pizza tonight, or whatever it is, that basically means let's pause this right now because we're getting disrespectful, and talk about it behind closed doors. So the kids get to say that? The kids get to say the watermelon?
No, the parents have it with each other. Yes. And that basically means I can tell one of us is getting heated. Let's table this until we can go discuss it away from them.
That's so good. I was just going to ask, because I know like in older generations, I remember having friends who would say, my parents never fight. And you just kind of hear that, like they would never fight in front of their kids. But then there's the opposite side where it's like parents are having these knock them out, horrible fights in front of their kids. So what would you say is a healthy, obviously you just said when disrespect comes into play, which is so helpful. That is so helpful. But what would be like healthy showing your kids like we disagree on this, but we're going to work this out? Or just, is it giving them like security, knowing that you're on the same team? What is that? What's healthy fighting in front of your kids?
Yes, I think it does give them security knowing you're on the same team. Jennie, that's a great question. And to say, I think you can have a code word, or I think you could say, Billy, mom and dad are getting, we see this differently, and we're going to go talk about it because we don't want you to worry about this. Or I don't know, that may be putting it in their head when they wouldn't. Maybe the code word is better. But I think you can come back if you get frustrated in front of them and say, every relationship you're ever going to have, you're going to disagree. And that's part of who we are as people. And it's important to talk things through. And so that's what we just did. And he is blowing right outside my window.
Oh, it's just fine. Just say hello, smile and wave.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. Yeah. That is so funny. Okay, he should be done with my porch.
I do like the technique,
quickly.
though. It's just, really getting after it.
Yes. So, yeah, I think to disagree with respect, to go talk about it, talk it through, and then come even process it with them. And, even if you lose your temper with your spouse, to say, I got really frustrated, and that's not how I want to treat your dad, or that's not who I want to be. And so I had to go take some deep breaths, and I had to go for a walk. Or, anytime self-regulation is one of the things kids are struggling with today more than ever before. And so anytime we can kind of narrate and talk through our experience of what it looks like to regulate ourselves, we're modeling for them that every one of us has all of these feelings. It's what we do with the feelings that's really important.
And so parents shouldn't be afraid to own their failures, is what I hear you saying.
No, not at all. No,
That
it's
won't
so
give
good
the
for
kids,
kids
that
when we
won't
do.
break the kids' confidence. Like, oh, mom and dad are blowing it. Like, you owning that. It's almost like they know it, they see it. So you're teaching them how to fail themselves then, right?
Exactly. And I would say one of the biggest problems in 2022 is the amount of kids who feel pressure to be perfect. I've never seen that like I see it right now too. So I talk about that literally twice a day with parents about, I want your kids to hear you talk about failure.
Great.
Because you're their heroes.
Yeah.
Now,
So
when it comes to, the struggle and the tension, because I mean, all of this is, I was talking to someone yesterday, newly married on our team, and I was saying, man, this isn't a problem you can solve. This is a tension you got to manage, and I think there's a big distinction between those two. You're never going to just get through this and it's done. But because they're at a spot where they've gone through a year of marriage, and so now it's approaching kind of, this is the reality setting in, and I think that's important for all of us. But I think the same is true when it comes to intimacy in your marriage, and the intimacy being stewarded and increasing and prioritized. And now I've got a child whose development through the stages I need to be mindful of. And those two things can at times feel like they are going in the exact opposite directions.
Yes.
So how can a parent, successfully prioritize the marriage when they feel like maybe they're putting their kid on the back burner?
Good, babe.
Well, yes, that's a great one. And I would say it's good for kids to be on the back burner. Part of what I think has happened in the last couple of years, and, there are a lot of things I could say about, what's happening today is, but I won't go into all the things. But I think one of the things is we have gotten, honestly, too kid-centric, where they feel like the center of our universes. And that is too much power for a child. And too much power creates insecurity. And so for you to go on dates is not just feeding your marriage, but actually you have more to give your kids when you're having time together. I met with a couple not long ago, and they had 4 girls, and one of their girls is on the spectrum. So, that's a lot going on at home. Just 4 girls without anyone on the spectrum is a lot going on at home. And, they take no time currently for themselves. And I said, I don't care what it takes. If you have to have a grandparent come, if you hire a babysitter for 10 minutes a day, but I want y'all to go on a walk at least for 10 minutes a day, where you are with each other and you have a conversation without your kids within earshot, that you're just, even if you're not talking, if you're praying together, whatever it is, I just want y'all to have that time together. It is so important for them.
That's so good. And I love that you say 10 minutes a day, because I think sometimes it's like, we can't take 2 hours, or we can't, but it's
don't
like,
have the budget for a date night, or whatever they would say.
Right.
But
exactly.
You can do a little bit, and those little tiny increments actually will grow and won't seem like a lot, but will invest so much in your marriage. It's so wise. Just little bits here and there.
Little bits here and there.
We do have to ask the elephant in the room question. Child sleeping in the bed. This is a thing I feel like I hear so often when I'm talking, well, how's your sex life? How's that? It's like, well, it's challenging. The kids that all end up in the bed, what are your thoughts there? And what can a family do,
Yeah. Well, I mean, most conversations I have with parents when kids are in the bed, it's because the child's anxious.
Yeah.
And we don't ever want to give in to the anxiety. And so if your child is making accommodations in their life, whether it's sleeping in your bed, whether it's not going to school,
or not being checked into the kids ministry at church or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Yes, exactly. We are reinforcing their anxiety, because to work through it, they have to do the harder, scarier thing. And so I would say, if your child's in your bed, not that there can't be one-offs where that happens from time to time, but if they are chronically in your bed, they need to get back to their own, for their own sense of independence, self-regulation, self-soothing, all of those things. And so from that psychological aspect for the child, I think it's so important, as it also is for your marriage, to your point, Levi. And so I think, I do a lot of, we call it exposure therapy with kids when we're talking about anxiety, but, having a child spend 5 nights on the floor next to your bed, and then they spend 5 nights in the hall on a blow-up mattress outside of your room, and then they work their way back toward their own bedroom, and maybe we incentivize and reward them along the way, because a lot of kids don't want to do the hard work. They would much rather be with you and let you be the coping strategy for them. And so I do think it's important to walk back toward it.
So it sounds to me like you're saying putting them in a place that they don't belong, in the center of the marriage or in the center of the home, or making everything about them, while it feels like you're doing this to serve them, is actually a disservice to them long term, because they're not going to get those grit muscles that they need to get to do hard things. Which life is hard things. College is hard things. Being a human is a hard thing. So making it so easy, they're going to become softer than they should be.
Wow.
Absolutely. And entitled, because they're going to expect to be the center of anything that they go into.
Wow.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Okay, so when it comes to the seasons of a child's development, you have really great literature and phases and all that. What do you think, if any, are seasons of marriage that people should be mindful of? Do you feel like there are developmental stages to, obviously we know honeymoon, we know, empty nester, but what other, if we were to kind of just creatively kind of play around with it, what seasons of marriage do you think there are?
Well, I think because I work primarily with kids, I can see the impact of different ages of kids on marriages. And I think, to me, the hardest seasons, well, maybe every season is hard in different ways.
It's so funny. Someone just told us yesterday that the hardest phase of all is having adult children. And I was like, wait, no, don't say that. That's the worst thing you can tell
but
us.
they said raising adult children.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait,
raising.
are you still raising?
Maybe that's just reflective. Maybe that's just reflective of the work they didn't do when the kid was in the explorer stage.
Bless their hearts.
That's a great question. Yeah, I do hear that that's challenging, but I don't think it has the direct impact on your marriage. That just in the toddler ages, you're so exhausted, and so it's hard to give the energy to your marriage that you need to give. And so the importance, like we're talking about, of carving that out. Then elementary and early middle school, just the sheer time you're devoting to your kids and getting to all the places. And I think I'm going to say something kind of controversial here.
Hot take.
Maybe for some people.
Hot take disclaimer. Here we go.
I have some concerns about travel sports, because I sit with so many families where one parent is gone almost every weekend.
Wow.
And I think that's too much for the marriage. That is hard.
No,
and
we
if you have
know some people, two
doing travel
kids
sports,
do two different travel sport teams simultaneously. They're both at different sides of the state simultaneously for months.
Yes. And I think that makes it, if you feel like that's what your family is committed to, then I think you just have to labor that much longer in how do we connect and how do we have this time without our children where we're looking each other in the eye and we're continuing to know each other in ways that we're evolving as people. And then one of the things that I see happen in adolescence that I think is really interesting is, if we were to go back to Freud and psychology, if any of us took psychology in college at some point along the way, or, have studied him, he talks about how kids can easily become the third person in the marriage.
Whoa.
And I think what happens, and in my work with girls, but I think this happens to the opposite with boys, adolescence is a time girls naturally and in fact have to push off of their moms to become their own people. It's like the pendulum, and they have to kick off hard. And it is really painful for moms. And I have entirely too many dads who then turn on the mothers. You're doing things wrong. You're not the mom you're supposed to be to her. She doesn't like you anymore. That it becomes more of a family systems problem than just this is normal developmentally. Wow. And I think moms can do it to dads with sons, because I think dads individuate boys individuate from their dads in the same way. And so I feel like in that season to, number one, really have each other's back. And number two, I think when parents can, I feel like dads with adolescent girls need to step into a lot more of the really specific parenting and taking on more of the boundaries and the consequences and being the bad guy, because she's naturally going to see her mom as the bad guy. And a boy's naturally going to see his dad as the bad guy a lot of times. And so when we can lean in and really help scaffold each other in those seasons, I think it helps the marriage, because I think that can start to erode the marriage when the child wedges themselves between.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's really good. Yeah, I'll never forget reading Strong Father, Strong Daughter by Meg Meeker, who I know you've had on the podcast and on your podcast, and just having my mind blown on that role of being the father to an adolescent, a teenager, when they want to push away all those things. And that's just, but I never have thought about it in the perspective of how our varying roles of good cop, bad cop, which is kind of sometimes how parenting feels, can actually erode the intimacy in the marriage, and just finding your way through it, and even being counterintuitive and not just doing the one that comes easy to you, but doing that other jujitsu kind of maneuver.
Yeah, but then it's interesting with each kid, because I feel like it's so different with each. Like I feel like most of the girls, I'm the good cop, you're the bad cop. With Lennox, you are always the good cop, and I'm the bad cop. But with I don't know. I just feel like it's so different.
Our hard thing is, we had the first wave of our 4 girls, and then Lennox was the surprise ending. Welcome, but surprise. And we feel like we're almost grandparents to him, because it was like such a separation of time. And so it is. I have to remind myself that I'm not a grandpa. I'm like, I just want to buy you things and dote on you. I'm like, oh shoot, I need to really. He's so cute.
I know.
That's so fun, y'all.
But yeah, just figuring out the vice versa, and that's really helpful. I can guarantee people are going to feel encouraged and excited to kind of approach it with that mentality. We found with the whole date night thing, there was almost no date night while our kids were from the ages of 2 to 7, where one of them wasn't crying every time we would leave, holding on to Jennie's pant leg, screaming in the driveway.
And then I'm crying. Should I leave?
Yeah, such conflict. Are we screwing our kids up? But it seems like you're saying we're actually, even if they might cry in the moment, down the road, long term, doing them a favor for ripping those Band-Aids off.
Yeah, absolutely doing them a favor. Yes.
So how much of parenting then, because it feels like that feels wrong, but it ends up being right. Is that true of everything with parenting? Is there anything that feels good and is good, or is it all the exact opposite of what it seems like in the moment?
Oh, God.
I think a lot of it that feels good and is good. And I think as parents, to trust the Holy Spirit inside of you and know that God has given you, y'all, this is out of control.
Wow,
Do you want me to go tell them to stop?
You must have a lot of leaves.
Yes.
They take it. No, it is what it is. We can hear your voice fine over it.
Unless you can't think.
If you can't think, you need to tell Mike to give it a break. Take 5.
Okay, I know. No, I'm just annoyed with the timing. Okay. Anyway, I really think your intuition as a parent is one of your superpowers and one of the greatest gifts that God gives you in this journey. And so I think I am probably saying some things that are antithetical to what we would think normally, but I want you to go with your gut as a parent, moms and dads. I mean, I just think trust yourself and trust that you know your child better than anybody, people like me included. I mean, I think it's so important to lean into and to pray that your gut is always directed by the Holy Spirit too.
Yeah.
And then lean into what you're hearing him say.
That's so important.
That's such a good word.
Okay, so now shifting gears, that's all very helpful. What replenishes you? I've got to wonder, sitting and hearing the hardest things that you have to sit in all the time. I never ask my counselor this because I don't want to know how much my garbage is profoundly impacting his moral well-being. But I would have to imagine sitting all day in what you have to absorb, that there is at times a challenge shifting back to you being, you, and having to kind of get compartmentalize, I guess is maybe the right word. How do you replenish yourself after all that?
Good question.
That is a great question. And, it's interesting. I think David Thomas is probably the only counselor that I know well that has been doing it for almost 3 decades. And he and I both have moved towards being way more extroverted than to way more introverted over the years, which y'all probably have too. I mean, maybe anybody who's working to the same degree with people, that's part of the toll that it takes.
Oh, yeah, we're shut-ins. We just want to be in sweats. Shut the world out. Absolutely.
Yes,
if you want to find us, don't. We do. That's what we always say. People say at the end of an interview, how do people find you? I'm like, don't actually. We're going to shut the door and lock it. bolt the door, draw the shades. We got a big box of cookies. We're fine. We're fine.
Y'all are my people. Honest. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I totally get that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I have to have a good amount of time alone, and I love to read. I love to go for walks, things like that. I don't listen to many podcasts myself. I don't ever listen to my own podcast because I'm a 1 on the Enneagram and I'll shred myself. But I think, I just have got to have things like that are replenishing me spiritually, emotionally. I watch a lot of really great TV shows at night, that I can just distract and laugh because I need to laugh a lot.
Do you have any favorites?
Things like that. I'm watching a really cute one right now I'm watching a terrible one and a cute one. And so I have to watch the cute one after the terrible one.
Yes.
Oh, you have to cleanse the palate?
Yes. Well, it's just heavy and dark. So
I need
to
do
shift.
That. They watch like Stranger Things.
No.
Well, my oldest.
No. Yes.
My kids watch Stranger Things. She's like, okay, Levi, we need to sit down. No, my oldest is 17. She will tell me that she'll watch Bluey, an episode of Bluey to cleanse the palate after watching Stranger Things. She's like, can't go to sleep like that. So I need something light. Very funny.
Yes. Well, have y'all seen Abbott Elementary?
No.
It is so cute and funny. I love it. It's a 30-minute comedy. It's really fun.
Okay, that's
my
awesome.
palate cleanser these days.
Very good. And do you have hobbies? Do you have working out wise? We love to talk about, sort of things that you find physically good for yourself.
Yes. I'm more of a walker. I love to walk. That's probably one of them. But I think my biggest hobby right now is being with my 2 little nephews. That feeds my soul as much as anything I do these days. I just
Aunt
have
status,
a blast
victory unlocked.
Aunt status.
And they're doing a sleepover with you tonight.
Yes, several sleepovers in a row. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that maybe is a good question to ask, and maybe we'll kind of wind down with this. I'll leave Jennie all the time at the end because I've been hogging her favorite guest.
I'm taking it all in.
I was going to say, you're an aunt, so and you don't have kids of your own, so you're able to pour in and serve in. And I'm sure we have a lot of people listening who are single, and they say, I don't have kids, but what importance do you think non-related family members and friends and kind of unofficial aunts and uncles, what importance is there, and how beneficial is that to having, we like to use the language of bamboo stakes, that saplings grow with the help of bamboo stakes. And I'm so grateful in even in this room, there are people that I'm recording in that have been that for our kids. So, what's sort of a mentality that you would say they could have in their mind in that role?
So, yes, I think other voices are so important in the lives of the kids that we love. And we talk about that at Daystar all the time, that we're not saying anything different than parents are, but because we're new voices, sometimes kids can hear us louder. And so, yes, pulling in family members, extended family members, friends who are like family, even saying to people, I would love to ask you if you'd be somebody in my child's life. I think it's the origin of the idea of godparents even. And so who can we be in the lives of the kids we love, and how can we pull other people in to be bamboo stakes? I love that idea.
Sissy, thank you so much for being on with us today. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for the light of God that so clearly shines from your life and from your eyes. And we just are so grateful for you and for the time that we will get to hug and meet in person. And we just bless you as you go. Thank you.
Y'all, thank you for what you do. And I can't wait for that day too.
Thank you so much for listening. And be sure to swing by LeviLusko.com to see what's going on in our world, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. In the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media. Jennie and Levi Lusko, out.